Welcome back to episode 4. As horrid as war is, it would be wrong to leave out the massive part that our railways played in World War I, and how the companies came together to serve the needs of our armed forces. To that end, this episode, number 4, looks at the ROD, or Railway Operating Division, and IW&D, or Inland Waterways and Docks, locomotives. We start off with a Hattons P-Class, number 5753, in ROD livery. You are watching my model of 5753 busily undertaking rod duties, moving about wagons loaded for shipment, and even working a worker's special to and from the yard. .753 was the first P-Class locomotive to be built at Ashford Works in 1909 and was employed on the Sevenoaks to Otford services. The loco was to have a long and interesting history. From April 1915 until October 1916, it was engaged in military work at Boulogne, where it was numbered as ROD 5753, and painted in unvarnished olive green. The South Eastern and Chatham Railway were contracted to construct exchange sidings at the docks in Boulogne for the shipping of munitions and other stores. On its return and after repairs due to a collision at Boulogne, 753 worked between Swanley and Gravesend West for a number of years, but became carriage pilot at Red Hill by 1923. It was renumbered 556 in 1925. In 1928 it was employed on the construction of the Wimbledon to Sutton line and later found itself at Dover and Folkestone to work around the harbours. During the mid to late 30s it was hired to the Kent East Sussex Railway. It returned to Channel ports where it worked until 1940, where it was further transferred to Gillingham, returning to Dover in 1945. After a further period of hire to the Kent and East Sussex before being purchased by the Kent and East Sussex in 1970. It was in steam a few times after its arrival, but was dismantled in 1973 for major boiler repairs and mechanical overhaul. Having spent 10 years dismantled, during 1984 to 1986 steady progress was made and the locomotive returned to service in Southern Railway livery as 1556. It would operate for 10 years, which included 2 trips to France to take part in the Kent and East Sussex twinning activities. Following expiry of its boiler certificate in 1997, it was withdrawn from traffic for overhaul and returned to service in 2001, restored with its original livery. The locomotive was withdrawn from service in 2010 when the boiler certificate again expired. Early in 2019, ultrasonic testing of the boiler was undertaken, which revealed that there was no major problems. As far as I know, it's still not in one piece and has been overtaken by other projects. Now we turn to ROD livery number 1918. I've already done an extensive history of this locomotive, and a link can be found in the top right of this video now, and I'll also put a link in this video's description. It's well worth a watch. You are watching my model heading for the yard with a long train of coal, supplies and petrol. She'll carefully pull into the yard where her train only just fits. The Railway Operating Division ROD 280 was a locomotive which was the standard heavy freight locomotive operated in Europe by the ROD during the First World War. The ROD adopted the Great Central Railway class loco K280 design by John G. Robinson in 1911. The model by Bachmann is one of my The Model Centre professionally weathered models, and I feel it really looks the part. These locos were built for the war and economic reasons, and were put to work on all kinds of trains, from goods to troop trains and ambulance trains. After the war, Britain's railway companies had a serious shortage of serviceable locomotives, and so 498 ROD 280s were loaned to 9 railway companies between 1919 and 1921 to cover goods traffic while the shortage was cleared. Now, there is a deliberate mistake within this train. Can you spot it and say why in the comments? Now a locomotive that arrived just before the war ended, and a model by Planet Industrials that I absolutely love. It's probably one of the best running steam locos I have. I covered it in detail a while back, so I'll put a link top right now and in this video's description box. The IW&D grey liveried Victory class number 12. The loco saw service in the UK before being shipped overseas, eventually coming home after hostilities had ended and being sold to a private concern. You are watching her employed on similar but much heavier duties to the P class. There is a great variety of wagons and companies represented, as all were involved in war service. In December 1914, as part of the Railways Directorate, the Inland Water, Transport and Docks section of the Railways Directorate was formed. Its role was to deal with the transportation along the canals and waterways in France and Belgium. By late 1915 it had become a separate section, growing rapidly at its headquarters in Richborough, Kent. The ever-increasing demands on rail services at Richborough saw an order placed with Kerr Stewart on the 4th of January 1917 for 10 060 tank engines, named Victory type. They were powerful at 49 tons with a tractive effort of 20,567 pounds. To end this episode, we must take a look at the rather splendid Bachmann box set, including rod livery, city class locomotive and part of an ambulance train number 40. The model heads out from the little station, having dropped off some walking wounded, who are all being well cared for by nursing staff and hospital orderlies. Great Western City Class locomotive number 3711 and named City of Birmingham was built in 1903, originally numbered 3434. During World War I, several locomotives from this class, including City of Birmingham, were requisitioned for service with the Railway Operating Division of the Royal Engineers. These locomotives were utilised to support military logistics, operating on various rail networks to transport troops, equipment and supplies. 3711 City of Birmingham was one of a handful of locos to wear this livery for a few months in 1916 before reverting back to Dream. It's likely she never got sent overseas, and if she did, only briefly. She worked instead here supporting the ROD, running many special trains including ambulance trains to various hospital locations around the UK. The free coaches provided only give a flavour of what was a huge undertaking, with 16 coach trains making up a complete hospital on rails, with nearly all the many departments to be found in land-based hospitals. I'll put a fascinating link in this video's description box to the National Rail Museum page on the subject, and it's really worth a read. After the war, City of Birmingham returned to the Great Western and continued in service until its withdrawal in July 1930. I hope you found that interesting. More to come. Cheers for now.